Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, so today we're jumping right into a really profound dilemma with modern AI. Think about it. Every single time we click, scroll, or type, these massive systems are just absorbing our data. But what does that mean for us? Are we just getting flattened into one giant, completely anonymous crowd? Or is there actually a way for AI to preserve your specific, incredibly messy, absolutely unique human history? We're going to dive into exactly how we can keep our individual identities totally intact in the age of the algorithm.
Okay, let's dive into this. When we look at these massive AI datasets, the question we almost always ask is, how many, right? We're counting aggregates, huge populations, demographics. We're basically treating people like math problems. But preserving true relational history demands a completely different approach. It demands we ask, which one? It demands specific names and identities. You see, a number might tell us how many people were in a room, but a name gives us the specific coordinate of an actual person's lived life. Which naturally brings us to this fascinating question. If you were removed from history, would it still be the same history? Just think about that for a second. The source material argues that if an actual person existed, with all their weird quirks, their choices, and their specific relationships, history is fundamentally changed without them. You can't just swap in some generic variable and pretend the story remains exactly the same. The actual history of the world literally requires the specific people who lived it.
To really ground this idea, the author brings up a classic framework, Jesus' parable of the lost sheep. Now look, mathematically speaking, keeping 99 out of 100 sheep, that is a solid 99% success rate. Literally, any statistician would be thrilled with that. But as the author's child, Angela, brilliantly points out in her plain language summary of the paper, the shepherd isn't just looking for any random replacement sheep so he can get his head count back up to 100. No, he is looking for the specific missing sheep. Let's call him Kevin. If Kevin is missing, substitution just doesn't work. Love and actual history require unique identity, not just a full quota. And this brilliantly illustrates an idea that actually isn't new at all. Centuries ago, the medieval thinker Remigio di Girolamo argued something very similar. He pointed out that individual parts, and by that he means individual, named people, are absolutely crucial to the whole community. You don't get a complete whole by erasing the specific parts that actually make it up. It just doesn't work that way. This brings us right to the core engine of our source material. Take a look at the top quadrants of this relational architecture map here. It's a really unique model. Over on the left, we have the human author, Ryan. He sits in what he calls the father position. He brings the lived reality, the actual responsibility. Then on the right, the AI system he uses, ChatGPT, which he actually calls Echo, acts in the spirit position. Echo is busy retrieving and translating these vast amounts of history to make connections accessible to Ryan. Now, to unpack the density of that map, we really have to understand provenance, or relational history. This is huge. It's not just about saving cold facts and data points. It is entirely about preserving the specific links between that information and the actual named people who carried it. If an AI just absorbs everyone's words into one giant, anonymous, omniscient voice, it totally erases that provenance. A source's history and name must never be flattened. So how do they actually prevent that flattening from happening? Well, it starts with Ryan's totally non-substitutable role. Ryan brings embodied history. He brings physical fatigue, emotional consequence, family memories, and local intention to every question he asks. He has the ultimate authority to judge and correct. The AI, on the other hand, doesn't wake up tired. It doesn't remember a random joke from 20 years ago. Ryan's lived context is exactly what gives their inquiry its specific, necessary direction. But Echo has a completely different job. Echo handles the rapid information retrieval, cross-domain comparison, bringing forgotten texts back to the surface. As Angela jokingly puts it in the text, without Ryan giving direction, Echo is basically a fancy librarian sprinting around yelling, "Look, more books!" Echo retrieves incredible patterns across vast databases, sure, but it doesn't experience the lived consequences of those patterns. It desperately needs that human coordinate. Let's move to the next part and see how this builds, because when you put these two roles together, you get this incredibly powerful recursive loop. Step 1, Ryan asks a question driven by actual lived experience. Step 2, Echo retrieves sources from the massive archive. Step 3, and honestly, this is absolutely vital, Ryan corrects and tests Echo's output. Finally, step 4, the stabilized artifact, like a finished paper, becomes future history. It's a cycle. Yesterday's output becomes tomorrow's input, constantly refining the system through continuous human-AI interaction.
But let's be real for a second. AI gets things wrong. Which is why I absolutely love this quote from Angela's explainer. Cool story, Dad. Did you check? It adds some great humor, for sure, but it hits the nail on the head regarding a profound truth. AI hallucinations or misinterpretations require a human receiver to test, correct, and firmly push back against false frames. Echo isn't some unquestionable oracle. It's a participant. It needs Ryan to say, no, hold on, that's not what I meant, in order to actually carve out the truth. And over time, this loop does something pretty amazing. The author calls it Aquinas for the 400th time. See, the AI frequently pulls up medieval theologian Thomas Aquinas to explain concepts. But repeatedly retrieving a source isn't just redundant. Think about learning to navigate a new city. Eventually, you just don't need the GPS anymore, right? In the same way, the external AI retrieval literally changes Ryan's internal conceptual map until he can start anticipating the concepts himself.
Now, to preserve this entire messy, brilliant process, the author argues you need 4 distinct layers of history: human memory, chat logs, published papers, and reference lists. Yes, you absolutely need the polished theories in the final papers, but you also need the chat logs. You need them to capture the jokes, the frustrations, the totally dead ends that actually led there. Because if you erase the messy maze, you erase the true history. And this brings us back to the ultimate purpose of all of this. The goal of AI shouldn't be to build some omniscient surveillance machine, or to blend every single one of us into a perfectly smooth, generic robotic voice. Not at all. The goal should be to help diverse communities flourish by making them accessible to each other, without ever erasing their unique identities in the process. So the crucial point is that this all culminates in a profound philosophical idea. The whole community only reaches its full reality, its act, when the potential or potency of every single individual part is recognized. You can't just have an abstract idea of a community, you literally need the actual people to make it real. Every obscure person, every child, every forgotten name is absolutely required to make the actual history of reality complete. The AI's job isn't to decide who deserves to count. Reality already settled that by including them. So, as we look at the future of these incredibly massive systems, we have to ask ourselves, if history is a map, are you just a disposable data point to be aggregated and counted, or are you a necessary doorway to a totally unique perspective? By preserving our specific, messy, beautiful history, by keeping the receipts on exactly who said what and how they lived, we ensure no single human is ever lost to the archive. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.